Hi, I'm your State Representative Annette Glenn. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Hometown Heroes. Each episode of Hometown Heroes will feature community leaders, local nonprofits, and others who make a significant positive impact in the 98th District. The place we call home has so much to be proud of. I hope you enjoy learning from our hometown heroes. As always, if you ever have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact my office. Enjoy the show.
Hello, I'm John Perry, and welcome to Hometown Heroes with Representative Annette Glenn. And Representative Annette Glenn, nice to see you. Who is the hometown hero for this week?
John, I'm excited to introduce you to Holly Miller. Holly's the Executive Director of United Way. And I'm going to just brag a little bit before I turn it over to Holly. Midland County in the entire country has the second largest United Way in all 50 states, period.
That
Speaks
is impressive.
volumes, doesn't it?
Generous community.
Yeah. So yes, when you look at being honestly one of the smallest as far as size of staff, but some of the largest in impact, we are the second highest per capita in giving in the United States, second only to Palm Beach, Florida.
Oh, that's amazing.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. So I think that, to me, that is something you don't take for granted. Right, it really is a testament to our community and to their roots and making sure that they're giving back, and philanthropy is a huge priority in the community.
Oh, I would totally agree. I just read the paper yesterday, and it said you are getting close to this year's goal. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this year we work with the community to establish our goal, our fundraising goal. It's really our impact goal. It's dollars raised to create change in the community. So this year's goal is $4.5 million, which is no small.
It's no small.
We're a community
No
the
small
same,
feat, right? And we are currently at about 96% of that goal.
That's amazing.
With more and more campaigns just being coming in and reporting. I always joke with our community because I'm this way as well. So we have the most caring and giving community of procrastinators. And so many folks are still actively campaigning with their employee groups, and then they're turning in results. So we hope to have announcements in the next couple of weeks of where we finally land when all the results are in.
Oh, it's pretty exciting. So United Way, my understanding is you have three main areas that you focus on. Would you tell us about those three?
Yeah, I'm going to back up and talk a little bit about what United Way is.
Perfect.
Right. So one of the things that I value listening a lot, and listening to other people's opinions, and because we serve the community. United Way both reflects and serves the community. Yes. So it's really important to understand what the community values. So I would say about 6 years ago, we invested 2 years in listening, going and talking to folks and asking them, what's important to you and why? And that became the framework for what today is known as our issues agenda, or our community level goals. Okay. These were not just goals that the data tells us are important, but this is what the people we serve said were important. And more importantly, we asked, what does success look like? So we're not prescribing solutions to the people that we're serving. We're asking, what is it that you need to have the best life you can have?
Sort of the experts, really, as the case might be.
Right. So that to me is a huge privilege to be able to speak for the community. The other thing that I had talked to a lot of groups this year and said, tell me what you know about United Way. And they say, oh, they're amazing, they do great work. I go, tell me about it. They go, I have no idea. Right? So they said it's complicated. I said, but should it be? So quite honestly, one of my goals this year is to try to make United Way understandable by our community, to understand what it actually does. So I'll start by thinking about a person who wants to make a difference in the community. You can look out and you can say, I want to make a difference, but how do I know? How do I know what the priorities are? How do I know what really the needs are? How do I know what success looks like? And how could I ever measure that? And how do I know when I invest time, money, or energy into anything, that change is actually taking place? Enter United Way. One of our key things is trying to make it easier for people to make a difference. Whether that's through donating dollars to invest in impact in our community, whether that's volunteering their time, or speaking out. on the things that they're important to them.
And you've got a wonderful aspect on your website where if somebody wants to make a difference, they can go to the website and start searching. I have an hour, I have this, and it will list opportunities from everything to going to visit in a senior center and painting fingernails. I mean, it's just an endless list. It's pretty amazing.
Right. You know, one of the things we always talk about United Way is impact is more than dollars.
Yeah, it is.
Right? It is people. It is people's hearts, people's time. If you think about any of the programs that we invest in, and I'll talk more about that.
Perfect.
They all require people as well as dollars invested into them. So back to your point about what are our 3 pillars, right? So trying to do everything in 3s. Our first pillar is youth success. The second is health. And the third is household stability. If you look at all of that together, it really represents what it takes for families to thrive and to live their best lives.
So even this summer, I noticed during the golf tournament, you're not done listening. So there were ways you were giving out tickets, and as people came in, they could vote on what priorities. If money was coming in from the tournament and it was going to be spent, where did the community want this to go?
Wasn't that a great illustration?
I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah, one of the things we tried to really bring to life is that every donor has a choice about how they're investing. So we wanted to find out what was important to the folks who were attending the LPGA tournament. So we looked regionally, so we partnered with our regional United Ways, and we said, what are the 3 issues that we all are working towards? Let's educate folks who are walking by and give them an opportunity to use their voice to vote on where dollars would be invested, so that they understood that by investing in United Way, you get an opportunity to invest in things you care about, the issues that are important to you. So it was really a robust day, and we had the opportunity to connect with thousands of different visitors. And the thing that won out by a very small margin
It's close.
was 3rd grade reading.
Yes.
Was right. That is something that they spoke, and so we were very fortunate to get a grant for $10,000 that day, and those dollars are going right back in regionally to impact that issue. So they got an opportunity to impact it that day.
Which of course is exciting to me because that is one of the things I ran on is we have to get our kids reading. If we can't provide reading, we penalize them with opportunities that we just limit them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
So I was excited to see that's where I voted. So I was excited. Well, let's go back to the 3. Let's start with youth. Tell us about that. Where do you target? What programs? What groups? Because I know you network with a ton of groups.
Yeah, one of the privileges we have is being connected at every level in the community, both with all the collaborative groups, but also the nonprofit community, as well as the business community. I kind of think of United Way as a hub between all of them that connect into the human needs and how do we advocate on behalf of the needs in our community. When you think about youth success, this is where honestly, this is my background, so it's also my passion around children. It's why I got into nonprofit to begin with, honestly, was through my volunteer work with kids. But if you think about our youth, they're our future. And
Absolutely.
so one of the questions I've always challenged folks with is to say, what do we wish we would have done 15 years ago to impact what we're dealing with today, any crisis we're dealing with today? And what do we need to do today to impact anything in the future?
Down the road.
It creates a different mindset about prevention. Prevention often is overlooked because
Yes.
it takes time. Change takes time. And when you think about kids, the investment we're putting in today doesn't pay dividends for sometimes 10 to 15 years from now.
But then it pays big.
But then it pays big, right?
It does.
And there's a huge economic impact. And I don't think that a lot of folks think about it that way. So $1 invested in youth today, studies show can save between 15 to 18 or higher dollars later in treatment.
It's a big ratio.
It's a huge ratio. But it's also one of those things that, let's face it, as a society, we're impatient.
We are.
Right? I mean, I get frustrated waiting 20 seconds for something to load on a website. So we're really going to be patient to wait for prevention and the youth work that we're doing collectively to see the benefits of it.
Yeah, well, and I just attended the Bay Prevention Network luncheon earlier this week, and some of the statistics they gave me were just unbelievable. Between 12 and 20% of all alcohol consumed is by underage drinkers. So that's not great news, but then when you dovetail it with 95% of all people who suffer from alcohol abuse and can't get clean, 95% started as underage. So if you can prevent them from drinking underage and give them a 95% chance of not having that issue in their life, that is phenomenal.
Right. So one of our focuses and all of our funded partners that we partner with, that we fund the programs that they run, use developmental assets as kind of a measuring tool. So for those who don't know, developmental assets are fascinating.
Very much
It's
so.
through the National Search Institute. They have a wealth of data. They've been studying this for generations. But basically, its premise is the more assets that children have, and there are 40 of them, 20 internal, 20 external, the more assets children have, the less risk-taking behavior they're going
That's
to have
right.
as adolescents and young adults, which we all know that will put them on a better path for a better future. So assets take time to build. Basically, what you're doing as young adults is you're measuring the work that you did when they were children. So assets are a huge measure, but also something to pay close attention to. How do we build assets in kids? And so much of it is based on relationships.
Right.
When you think about kids today, especially those that are considered at risk or in poverty, living in poverty, they live in relationship deserts. They spend a lot of time alone. They might have parents that are working. They might come from single-parent households. They may come from two-parent households, but they're working hard just to survive.
Yes.
And so just investing in building those relationships with kids and those assets is so important. Resilience is something we're looking at a lot.
That's huge.
It's huge. You think about, I often ask kids, and I ask adults the same question, how many of you have never failed? Right?
Right.
We all have failures. But resilience is really about failing forward. It's
Right.
failing and keep getting up and keep going. And we have to build that grit and resilience in our kids. Otherwise, failure could be a stopping point. And oftentimes we see that with kids who are learning, that if they start having failure, they need that, that boost of resilience and understanding that failure is an opportunity to learn.
Well, and life is hard, teaching
Yes.
them that it's okay that it's hard, and that often after hard becomes this unbelievable breakthrough of good things. I used to say, if you can teach your kids to fail successfully, then you have prepared them for life, because you will fail. And then the question is, what's next? You failed, what's next?
Right. And kids have so much capacity. How can we have them see that and feel it? Every child has potential, right? And how do we bring that to life for every child? So our youth pillar and youth success is huge, and we invest in a lot of different things beyond preschool. We fund 4 different preschool programs because place matters.
It does.
Right? It's important to have services available for low-income families where they live, with reading tutors and mentors, to make sure that we have volunteers that can walk alongside struggling readers and walking alongside the public schools. They're doing amazing work, but how can we partner and help them
Right.
to be successful on their path? It takes a community. We can't just rely on the schools to raise our children.
It kind of goes back to the relationships that you were talking about.
Yeah. So it takes a community to raise children. So how do we walk alongside to get the best outcome for all of our kids?
Well, then it ends up with those things that I love to look for is the win-win. How do we help the schools, help the kids, help our future?
Right.
And we end up with great results when we all work together.
Right. The other thing I talk about with all of our pillars is they're not separate, they're integrated.
They are.
They're so connected, and sometimes you'll start seeing things that we fund programs around folks who are seeking a sober lifestyle and overcoming addiction, which is, you see the opiate numbers rising. Again, that question, had they had more asset building as youth, would they have had the same struggles? It's,
Right.
it's an interesting question. So you'll see this continuum, that it's not just, we meet people where they are, right? But we don't leave them there. And so that's why I think when you look out in the community, there isn't one organization, there isn't one program,
one.
and the one focus area that's going to change the face of any community. It takes multiples, and it takes them working in concert.
And I think Midland does a really good job of doing that, and then analyzing data, and then saying, how do we improve this? How do we reach more? Who are we missing? Who do we include? Who do we add to make this be more successful?
Most definitely. We are very blessed to, we do a lot of research in Midland. It's a science-based town, right? It's our roots. And that's amazing to be able to both do the analytical research as well as the human research and understand both parts of the aspirations and being able to measure success.
Let's talk a little bit about housing and how that fits in with everything else.
Yeah, so our pillar around household stability looks at housing stability, right? One of the things that studies will show us is it is so much more expensive to rehouse someone than to keep them stably housed.
Right.
So what is the barrier? Sometimes it could be simply a hot water tank. It could be a hole in a roof. It could be a ramp, right? So making sure we're looking at making sure people are staying in their housing and keeping them stable is step one. Second is basic needs, right? When we're looking at people in their worst possible chapter of life, hope may come in the form of groceries or a consumer's voucher, right? Just that thing to get them back on their feet, to get back into life. Because it can be overwhelming. You think about if you're at risk for losing housing, does anything else matter? Right? That becomes everything.
I think it takes all your brain time.
Right.
You're thinking, how do I fix this? How do I fix this? How do I fix this? And whatever else is going on in your life is going to drop off a little bit.
Right.
And instead of trying to balance, you're kind of going to get behind on the others as well.
Yeah. So those basic need provision are huge. One of the other things under household stability is childcare. You know, talking to a lot of families, high quality childcare, which is vitally important into the development of our kids, is expensive, as it should be, right? For those families, there was a statistic I was looking at that if you make, at the poverty level, let's say you make $30,000 a year, or $30,000 a year, a family of four, you're going to spend up to 70 to 80% of your income on childcare, right?
Wow.
So one of the things that we do is we partner with nonprofits throughout the community to invest in scholarships for high-quality childcare, recognizing that allows parents to keep working and puts their child in a high-quality environment where they're being nurtured and grown as well. It's a win-win.
Totally a win-win, because often we do have to start at those entry-level jobs to gain the skills to move up. And it's hard, because when you're at those levels, it's not always easy to make everything match up the way you would like it to. Not always easy to provide the kids the things that you want to provide for them. But if you hang in there through those tough times, you end up better on the other side. It's just going to be a little bit of a struggle for a while.
Exactly. And we want to make sure that we have a community that is showing up for folks in the struggle, but not leaving them there. Right?
Yes.
That's why case management is so vitally important. There's always case management associated with any program that we invest in and with our partners, because it takes, when someone comes in with one problem, it's rarely they come in with one problem.
It's one that's at the top of the list today.
Right. But maybe one of the things that is a focal area is teaching budgeting. Right? Understanding how to set goals and save money and how to live on a household budget and what that actually looks like.
There can be a lot of different pieces to this type of work.
Because that becomes part of that wraparound, which is so, that's why our partner agencies, the way that they collaborate and kind of work together, to me is like, it's poetry.
Very much so.
Right? So many people will ask, well, you know, you have a lot of different, we have 25 different partner agencies that we fund. They go, is there any redundancy? I said, there's no redundancy, but the way that they knit together and help each other and hand off one to the other to make sure that we're wrapping around the whole family and individual, I think is poetic.
Oh, I would agree. It's beautiful to watch how things work together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when we're talking about people that are kind of struggling and any one thing is going to be an issue, I would love for you to talk about the ALICE population and what we're doing to help them.
So yes, the ALICE study is kind of an innovative study that we're now in our second opportunity to measure it. It was born out of United Way on the East Coast. Michigan was the second adopter. We were one of the first in Michigan to adopt it.
Okay.
Recognizing this is a population that isn't often looked at. Historically, this was a population that probably was called the working poor, right? But that has a lot of negative connotations. So ALICE is a great, it's a more personal way to embrace, and it stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. So these are people we know well. These are folks working 2 to 3 jobs. We see them every day. And they are one emergency away from falling into poverty. So I always, there was a story that kind of came to fruition about a young man who was going to school, had a family, had a job, had a second job, and the transmission went out in his car. Okay.
Yes.
No savings, right?
Right,
Just
because
getting
we're in
by,
school,
right?
where we're waiting to get to that next level where it's not as tight.
So then it becomes a domino effect. No
does.
car, can't get to work. Can't get to work, can't get the kids to daycare, right? It's
Right.
how do we support them? They also don't qualify for a lot of assistance historically. And so while I think that this is something that United Ways and our communities across the nation really are trying to shine a light on, we offer services to Alice now. But there's so many opportunities for more, to meet them where they are. So much of the assistance that we think of, the public assistance, is for those in the poverty, right? And Alice often doesn't qualify.
They're just above.
They're just above, but they're at risk of falling in if they're not supported. So one of the really key ways that we support the Alice population is on those scholarship for childcare.
Oh,
That is
great.
huge, right? We brought together the probably, 40 or 50 folks who had a stake in food security, specifically to talk about Alice. We wanted to know what Alice, because we knew they were food insecure, but we wanted to know what they thought. So we partnered with our friends at SVSU and started reaching out to the Alice population around food. And it was fascinating. And I will say the majority of what we got back is, yes, they are food insecure. Food insecure means you don't have access to healthy, sustainable food. It doesn't mean you don't have food. Ramen noodles, right,
yeah.
and dollar store food is not
in terms
sustainable.
of the green vegetables. And
Right.
So one of the ways I love to show how United Way can be really successful is in that collaborative spirit. We brought together 40 folks in the community who had a stake in this. We studied it, and together we started exploring solutions. Again, it doesn't have to be United Way-born solutions, it's community-based solutions. And out of that conversation came some fascinating things. First, Alice will be the first one to tell you that there are other people who are more in need of them, and you should help other people. So first, it's getting them to identify that we can help. There are resources available.
And it's okay.
Right.
It's okay. That does not mean somebody else does without, because you get a little help as well.
Correct. And creating safe places for them to feel like they want to pay their way, but they need help. So out of this conversation around food security, a few really cool initiatives popped up. One was The Bridge, which is a low-cost food store, but you buy it. You come in and you pay, it's hugely discounted. They leverage incredible savings with our local stores. But people can come in and take pride in the fact that they are purchasing food at a discounted rate. Right. And then they partner with Hidden Harvest and other folks in the community, with even the food banks, to make sure that there's a bonus section. So fresh fruits and vegetables are free, and you can always leave with some more. So that's been an amazing effort that is not driven by United Way. It really came out of the community. Another one was Midland Fresh. And that was, again, that came out of that conversation where we looked at, we were doing so many community gardens, but how do we distribute out into the rural areas? And so we had a gentleman who'd made it his mission to build a cart and had volunteers, and it's growing. It's actually now at the Arnold Center, part of their Arnold Farms program, to get fresh produce free of charge out into the rural areas where they might not have access otherwise.
so even transportation, obviously, can become a piece in that regard.
Yes. Yeah, it's always complicated.
Yeah. Moving parts.
Never just one thing.
Yeah.
So 40 people, or 40 organizations.
40 organizations.
40 organizations.
And we still meet. We're continuously looking at how do we continue moving the needle together.
That's wonderful. Well, and the other thing I know about the Bridge is you talked about teaching budgeting. I know that they've taught some cooking classes as well. Okay, now you've done your grocery shopping. Here's what you're going to do. Or I think sometimes the cooking class comes first. Like, here's what you could make out of things that are in the store, and how many meals would that last, and what would it cost? So a little budgeting and cooking, because I came from a family where almost everything was exclusively cooked from scratch.
Right.
But that's a rarity. That was something my mom was, that was important to her, that we had salad for 2 out of 3 meals every single day. And if I call her today, she's still most likely to be eating a salad over anything else. But
Right. But yeah, having access to it and then understanding what to do with it.
What to do with it's a biggie.
Right?
We signed up for, what was it? Those where you just show up and you get the produce? Because I
Yes,
wanted
yes.
to expand the vegetables. I wanted to not have choices and to figure out what to do with them. So
Any of them stump you?
no. Google's
good.
wonderful. You know, things I didn't recognize, I could Google and then figure out 3 or 4 recipes, and we'd try some. I would say most were a win, and we would have bought again and go to Myers. But I would assume the fresh section, the same thing. It's kind of fun. It's like a bonus. It's free, and then the excitement of what am I going to do with this free, healthy alternative?
Healthy is key too, isn't it?
Healthy is so key.
Yeah.
You know, food that is not healthy is cheaper.
It is cheaper
And it's more readily available at
and more
convenience
calories
stores, right?
and. Oh yeah, a bag of chips versus an apple. You want 2 apples, or you want, I don't know, 8,000 calories in a bag of chips.
Right. So it's even just building that capacity in kids. One of my favorite stories, we were out at Floyd Elementary one summer. We were partnering with them. They had a wonderful summer program. And we were bringing volunteers in to come in weekly and just help support their reading component, to read to kids and encourage them and walk alongside. And one of the components was to bring some healthy foods in, and they got to clean it and eat it. And it was part of their daily meal was to bring fresh produce from the gardens to the program. And there was this little boy, he had never eaten a blueberry. He had never seen one. And he was just enthralled, like a whole new world opened up to him. Like, I love blueberries. He just couldn't say enough about blueberries. And so to me, it's one of those things that you take for granted, right? And there's so much that these kids and families don't experience and maybe don't have access to. So it's always aspirational.
Absolutely. Well, and if you've got a limited budget, you're not going to experiment. You're going to buy only what you know your kids are going to eat, because every penny's going to count. If you've got a little flexibility, you can do something else. So Holly, what haven't we talked about that you would like to share with us?
That's such a great question. I guess the one thing I will say, I always, I love stories, right? Stories
Yes.
really help to illustrate how we come together. And I had one that I really got to experience organically. And it was a mentoring relationship through Big Brothers Big Sisters. And there was a little, and her big had reached out to me and said, hey, I want to tell you our story. They were celebrating 30 years of their friendship.
Wow.
So this is really interesting because it's full circle. I had an opportunity to meet with them, and she was telling me about how all these things had changed in her life. Her parents had an 8th grade education, and she was matched with a mentor, and how it changed her life. And they were only matched for a year. But she talked a lot about how her family, they were recipients of help, and they relied on those community supports. And she talked about all the ways her life has changed. But the biggest thing she shared to me was, it didn't just change her life. It changed her children's life, her grandchildren's life. It put her on a new trajectory. And she's now a PhD teaching nursing at SVSU. And so you talk about, this matters. What we're doing matters. Investing in kids and in relationships matters.
It really matters. Holly, thank you so much for what you do at United Way. And I'll just shout out, check out the website, volunteer, donate. This is a place that makes a difference.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us on Hometown Heroes.